Hey everybody, it's the Herb Guy with Where Science Meets Nature. And today we're going to talk about how to make your own poison ivy salve slash balm slash cream, ointment, whatever. Later on in another video I'm going to show you how to make a lotion out of all of that, which I feel is much better for your skin. There's plenty of plants out here that you can use for it. I have picked 7. Yarrow, if you have it, is a very good one to have. You just need the flowers, and since we're going to be making a very small batch, you just need to take a pinch. So, you know, one roughly the size of a 50-cent piece, if you know what that is. um, a patch of flowers like that would be ideal for what you're going to be doing today. And there's plenty of other plants out here. You have the heal-all, this little purple one here. Plantain, you've probably seen plantain. Another healing herb, anti-inflammatory, pain reliever. The common phrase is plantain for pain. You want to go and harvest just the leaves of these plants, because since you're going to be making a salve, you want as little liquid, water liquid in it as possible. Otherwise it doesn't necessarily blend very well. And then you need an emulsifier and a blender, and you definitely can't get away with just making a small batch. At that point you have to make a larger batch. Okay, so we're walking through this really long yard. I'm sorry for the disorientation there. I'm getting used to this new tripod. So one of the first ingredients that I'm going to use, and if you have it, I would suggest that it would be one of your additions. How we're going to do it is I have 7 herbs picked, and I'm just going to use like 4 of them. These are all just examples. Excuse me, sorry about that. All right, so the first one is going to be jewelweed. Now, when you collect your jewelweed, make sure that you just get the leaves. And the reason why we're getting the jewelweed is because it's very effective against poison ivy. It helps to neutralize the oil. It does help to heal rashes, contrary to other people's opinions. It's a healing herb. It's certainly not one you want to make a tea out of, because it's also an emetic. So it has the tendency to make you vomit if you drink it. But it's a lot like aloe in its healing properties. Smartweed is also another good plant to have. It's a contact healer. There's chickweed. There's a slew of them in your yard. Let's see. I'm trying to find you some orange flowers. There we go. All right, so this is the distinctive flower of jewelweed. It's kind of a bell-shaped flower. It's either orange like this or yellow, and I think a lot of that is dependent upon the soil, like with hydrangeas. Now I'm going to pick a few of these flowers because we're going to add that to our salve. The flowers also have medicinal value, so I just have a few. I already have some leaves harvested. Take a walk around the U. If you have it in your yard, smartweed, this one here. If you have TikTok, I just did a post on smartweed. Smartweed is a healing herb too. And then growing right with it is the other one that is in our salve today. You see that distinctive little flower there? This is called gallant soldier. This is a natural remedy to nettle. And see, this is not nettle. This is white vervain, but it's very similar to nettle. But it'll grow like that in the wild. So you'll see nettle, and then you'll see gallant soldier growing right next to it. So if you get stung by the nettle, you can use the gallant soldier to help take care of that pain. And then here's a better version of heal-all right here. Can you see that? And as the name implies, it's also called all heal, but as the name implies, it is a healing herb, and it is used for all types of skin conditions, internal conditions. It makes a great tea. You could actually grab like a couple of just the flowers if you wanted to for your salve, because the flowers have a lot of the nutrients. So I'm going to go over to the table where I have all of our stuff, and we're going to discuss the ones that I have and why I picked them. Alright, so we have plantain. The size of that leaf. We have plantain. You don't need that much, but you know, this is more for effect than anything else. This thing's huge. And then I have, and the plantain's for pain. Plantain helps to heal rashes and cuts and stings. It gets down inside and it heals from the inside out. But it also, in clinical studies, it's shown to actually, it starts the healing process like immediately. And it's also an anti-inflammatory. So part of the issue when you have poison ivy is everything's all inflamed. And so when you have the plantain, it helps relieve that inflammation, which will help relieve the itching. And it's part of the whole healing factor. And of course, we got our jewelweed, right? You only harvest the leaves. Don't get the stems, because if you get that in your salve, that won't work. But when we go to make a lotion, it's different. We're going to do it differently. But obviously the jewelweed is also, it's for the rash. I have here, and we haven't covered it in any of our videos, this is called goldenrod. You're probably seeing a lot of it right now. The stems are pretty tall. I mean, these things will get 5-6 feet tall. They have yellow flowers at the end. This particular plant helps fight histamine production. So it's an antihistamine herb by itself. It helps with allergy relief. And the issue with poison ivy is that it's an allergen introduced to your body. So, this helps to alleviate the symptoms of having an allergic reaction. Here's the smartweed. And if you notice, I also grabbed some of the flowers. So we have the smartweed leaves and the smartweed flowers. So there's 4. Here's the gallant soldier leaves. You can see that's kind of a distinctive shaped leaf there. Some of them are kind of big. Some of them were smaller, obviously. It is a plant. That's how it works. I grabbed some mullein because mullein is a great anti-inflammatory. Now this is can you hear that? It's a very fluffy leaf. And those hairs, once this plant is dried, can be a real pain in the butt when you go to process it. But we're going to cut this up and we're going to put it in our salve. And a lot of people don't have this in their yard, of course, but I also grabbed a stem of aloe. Now, we're not going to put the whole thing in there. We're going to do something different with this aloe that you don't typically do, and it's somewhat wasteful. But because we're making a salve and we don't want a bunch of liquid in it, we have to do it in order for it to work. So stay tuned. I got to get this mess cleaned up. I got to get everything inside, and then we're going to go to the next stage. Okay, now that you've gone and harvested all these herbs with all that hard work, now it's time to get them prepped, which is fairly simple. You don't need a lot because we're just going to make a small batch, and the bigger the batch, the more you're going to need, clearly. So I'm just going to take a little bit of each of the herbs, and we're going to add it to the whole. I took some plantain, there's some goldenrod, got the jewelweed in there. You definitely want to use the jewelweed seeds if we're making a poison ivy balm. That's one of the most important. If you don't have jewelweed, aloe does work in a pinch. So there's the gallant soldier, or there's the goldenrod, I'm sorry. Gallant soldier's underneath. Make sure you get some flowers, right? We're going to add those for sure. They have a lot of the properties, and sometimes it adds some pretty cool colors to the balms and salves. I ended up getting way too much for what we were doing today, and I'm not really used to making small batches. I'm used to making it gallons at a time. So this is new to me too. Dice them up, chop them up. Just don't chop up your fingers. Especially the flowers. That'll release a lot of their properties too. The more surface area you release, the more the properties that come out. But since we're making small amounts, I had to do more because we're doing 2 different kinds of salve. We're going to do one with beeswax and one without. The TikTok channel only shows the beeswax version. There's a nice and diced up. Gotta make sure I got a little bit of everything in there. Some smartweed. You can just break it up like this too, because you're bruising them at the same time. That does work. You take all of that and you put it in your pot, your pan, whatever you're using. I'm going to put all of it in one, and then I'm going to get my other pan out for the other salve. Now, the other thing, hang on a moment. The other thing about this is when you're doing your aloe vera, we're making a salve out of the aloe vera. You don't want it to be wet. So I got way too big a knife for this. Score it, open it. It's going to be kind of slimy. Some people don't like it. But score it, open it. You see how slimy and wet it is, maybe. Take your knife, oops, try not to cut it, and just lightly scrape all the water away. And the gel. The gel is really helpful. That's the best part of the aloe. Kind of doesn't look very appetizing. But this is what you want to put in your salve. It's scraped. It's still a little wet, but a lot of that will go off. But you just really want this leaf. This is the one the properties we're looking for. And, you know, again, you can break it up, cut it up, whatever. Add it in there. In regards to oils, base oils, it doesn't really matter what you use as long as you do not use canola oil or corn oil. You don't really want those as your base oils. Our typical mix is we use avocado oil, grapeseed, and coconut oil. Olive oil works well, but it does tend to go rancid fairly quickly in comparison to the others. If you add essential oils, that will add to the lifespan of the oil too, because the essential oils they break down bacteria that causes them to go bad. There's some more of the plantain. The bugs were certainly happy to have some. Alright, so there. We have everything mixed. Well and equally mixed. Can you see that? Sorry. And we're going to take it. I got to take half of this and put it in the other pan. The other pan is way bigger. Again, I'm not used to making these tiny batches. It's so weird. Alright, so there we go. I've got all the jewelweed in there. I think I used all the jewelweed, considering that's the main ingredient. I want to get some of these flowers out of here. Sorry. You're hearing his noise. Alright, so you want to add on your base oils, your base oil that you're going to make, use 3/4 of a cup of your base oil to cook it in. Otherwise, it'll be not enough. There's the base oil. You have to cook it for 3 hours on the lowest heat possible. If you hear it popping and cracking, that means your herbs are frying because it's in oil. You need to turn your heat down. And if it does start to pop and crack, turn your heat off for a minute and let it stop doing that. Once it stops doing that, turn the heat back on, lower than you did last time. But you're going to do it for 3 hours. That'll be enough to get all the properties out of the herb. Hold on a minute. I have to get another set of oil, but we're going to use a different amount. Hold on. I probably should have done this the other way. Since the other salve is not going to have any beeswax in it, we are only going to use 1/2 cup of oil to cook it in. And again, you still have to do it for the 3 hours. I should have done that in reverse. We have gas, and that can be really hard to regulate. And we have a very old gas stove. You just really want to get it warm enough to break down the plant matter. There's not very much oil in there, but there's enough. It'll coat the bottom. You either want to use stainless steel or porcelain. Try to avoid the others because aluminum and Teflon and the non-stick stuff can leave traces of that stuff in your herbal things. So, you know, I'm a big proponent of not doing that. You let it set for 3 to 4 hours. You want to cover it once it gets to the heat you want it to be. And once it's done, we'll get to the next stage of how to make this. And hopefully this will all still be done in time for everybody to see it before the weekend. So stay tuned. You can look. There you can see the plant's actually moving. Now if it does get too hot, you know, you can always you can get it up to heat, cover it, and just let it set for a few hours too. That's okay. Really, you're just trying to break out some of it. You're making an herb tea out of oil versus using water. Alright, so because we're doing 2 different kinds of salve, I went ahead and set up 2 of these jars. Now you can use a mason jar, and if you're doing bigger batches, clearly you would use a bigger jar. I just take an old t-shirt. You can use cheesecloth, you know, something that's cloth without a lot of really fine threads, otherwise it'll never sieve and it'll take forever. But I just use that with a jar, and you can take your stuff, your oil, and just pour. Be careful, it is hot. But the hotter the oil, the faster it'll strain. You can see there, it's even taken on some of the color of the herbs. This is the one that has the 3/4 cup. This is the one with the 1/2 cup. It's not quite as thick, but we're going to pour it like this. If you use a t-shirt, it strains really fast. Once it's in there, you're going to strain it out, squeeze it out. And now that we've done that, here's the very next step. You're going to take the pan that you used, just wipe it out. It doesn't matter if there's really any stuff in there. It's not going to hurt. It's all going to be in your salve anyway. Be careful, because this could still be hot. I've been letting this sit for a few. Take your lid off. Make sure to hold your t-shirt, otherwise it'll fall down inside. And it comes out in a pile like this. And you can squeeze it out in there, set it aside. You know, it doesn't really matter because your properties are now in your oil. So that's 3/4 cup. This is for the beeswax. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other one in this pan too, because it's the only small pan that I have. And the other one's going to be a bit different. So I'm going to get the ingredients that I'm going to need for these two. I'm going to go ahead and strain this other one out. And I'm going to put it in the measuring cup. And then we'll go to the next stage. Hang on. Okay, so here's how I do it to save time. This oil is already hot. Still hot from when we just strained it and everything. You take 30 grams of beeswax. If you don't have 30 grams, 28 will work. That's a 1 ounce. You can use 1 ounce. If you have a scale that doesn't do grams, you can do 1.1 ounces. You take your beeswax and you put it directly into your oil, all of it. Beeswax beads are the best to work with. And you can just use a spoon to stir. Now you want to heat this up very slowly, because if you heat it too fast, you'll burn the beeswax. Oh, missed a spot. So you just take it and you put it back on the stove. And put it on very low. You want to stir it continually, otherwise the beeswax, and here, give me a second. You want to stir the beeswax down in there will stick together, and then you'll have one big clump and it'll take forever for it to melt. Now you want to go ahead and melt that. This is the other quarter cup of oil that I told you from the 1 cup that we started with. You keep stirring the beeswax. Once the beads start getting small, so you stir, you can see them in there. Once the beads start getting small, you'll see it. You'll notice a difference in size. Go ahead and turn off your oil at that point, because it's already hot enough to melt the beeswax. It only has to be, I think it's like 148 degrees. Don't quote me on that. Doesn't have to be very hot. Less than 150 degrees and it'll start melting beeswax. So just keep it stirring. It will coagulate. Once it's all done, I'll show you. Alright, so all the beeswax has been melted. You might want to put an oven mitt down. I'm just doing it on the counter. You can do this on the stove. This is just easier for me to record here. Now all the beeswax is done. If you want to speed up this process and you want it to cool a little faster, which I prefer to do, sorry about that, you want to make sure to put it in glass when you're done. You take the other quarter cup of oil that you had and you add it, and you got to make sure to mix it. Now it's immediately going to act like it's going to get thicker, because it's getting thicker, and you just cooled it off by 20 degrees or so, so it'll definitely cool faster. Once you mix it up, you pour it in, whatever you plan on putting it in. Some people put it back in their jar, and then you can do that. Oops, spilled a little. Oh well, I'll clean it up. And you can already see that the beeswax, the salve is hardening. So you can either put the lid back on, you want to wipe it off with, say, a paper towel, so you don't have all the wax on the threads. And you just let it sit. It'll be ready. Judging with it being this thick, it'll probably take it about a half an hour to an hour for it to harden. Once it's all hardened, I'll show you what it looks like and how hard it's supposed to be. If we did everything right, this will be a nice hard salve that you'll be able to use at any point. It'll work for any rash. It'll work for poison ivy. It'll work for any allergic reaction, bug bites, cuts. This is a basic first aid salve with a primary goal of it being for poison ivy. Okay, so this is the one that we're using with the cocoa butter and the shea butter. And what I ended up doing was we did 50 grams of cocoa butter and shea butter. The shea butter is kind of sticky. 50 grams to 3/4 of a cup of oil. We have a half a cup here that we heated up. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add that to it. Stir it up a bit. It'll start melting immediately. The temperature for melting for these two is awful low too. You can put it back on the stove and let it heat up again. But again, once it starts getting small, it's going to take care of everything else by itself. It just depends on how impatient you are. This will not get as hard as salve with beeswax. And if it does, it won't be as effective because you won't have as much herb in it. So you're stirring. I did not turn the heat back on. I'm just going to go ahead and let this melt. And when it does, we'll add our other 1/4 cup and put it in the jar and get it labeled. So give me a minute. We'll get this taken care of. Alright, so everything is melted. It's going to look a little bit creamier than the beeswax version because of the different products that they have. You go ahead and you add your 1/4 cup. Stir it up. Make sure it's well stirred. Otherwise, you'll have hard spots and soft spots in your salves. It'll kind of like be a zebra salve. You stir it up really well. If you want to do it without spilling it, one of the ways that I found is you can put it back in your measuring cup. A little bit of debris in there. That will not hurt you. And then use your measuring cup to pour it so you're not spilling it all over the counter. This will also take roughly an hour to dry, cool. And again, the cooler you keep it, the harder it'll be. And it'll come out to be a pretty decent salve. The one thing you got to make sure to do is label it. Because if you have 10 of these sitting around and not one of them has a label, you may not know exactly which one is which. And different herbs will color your salves differently, and each one will smell a little different. But trust me when I tell you from experience, you need to label everything. So this one will be considered poison ivy cocoa butter, and then the other one will be poison ivy beeswax, because we did the two separate ones. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comment section below, and I will try to get back to you as quickly as I can and be as thorough as possible. If you want any other kinds of videos, that would be ideal. Give these two a little bit of time to cool. I'm going to go ahead and get one more part of the video so you can see it, and we're going to go from there. Hopefully you guys like this, and keep watching. Stay tuned for more. I'm only going to be able to do about one video a week from here on out, but one big video like this a week. The TikToks I'll do 6 to 7 a week. So stay tuned, folks. Thanks for watching. Alright, so as an end result, we have our poison ivy with beeswax, which is already kind of hard. I went ahead and put them in the refrigerator because I have a bunch of other things I have to take care of today, so I kind of sped up the process. This, with the shea butter and the cocoa butter, will probably end up more of the consistency of a cream or a lotion, and but you just need a little dab on the tip of your finger to and apply a small amount. I always say just a dab will do you, and it should last. I mean, that's a year's supply, and so that's how easy it is to make it. If you have any suggestions or other comments, please leave them in the comments below. I truly appreciate you watching, and I apologize that it's taken so long for me to make a video. Stay tuned for more, or check us out on our 1 Minute Herbs channel on TikTok, and I do videos every day. Thanks for watching, guys.